Hey folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. Instead of our regular Sunday session with Jamie, we've got Jamie plus Andy from Andy's Cavern, Scotland's best boxing YouTube channel. And we've also got esteemed trainer and coach Julian Mcgowan. So welcome everybody.
How you doing, Bob?
Well, good man.
Jamie, I keep meaning to call you out on why you think that Lennox Lewis is better than Joe Lewis, but we'll maybe leave that for one of our Sunday afternoon sessions where you can be better prepared. But I thought maybe we could kick off this afternoon session with I don't know. How about next weekend's Fabio Wardley and Justice Hooney? Who wants to lead the charge on that one?
Go on, Jamie.
Okay. You know I like to chat, don't you? Right. I think it'll be suicide for Hooney, to be honest with you. He's an exciting sort of come forward type fighter, and I just think he's going to play into the hands of Fabio Wardley. Fabio Wardley loves to just let them hands go, doesn't he? And he's not too defensively sort of inept, is he? Really, Wardley as well. Given his background as a white collar fighter, which we always mention, I think he's got some good grounding in him. He practices this little lazy man shoulder roll, but it's very, very effective. And I think he's just gonna, every time Hooney tries to come in and try and maraud and all that, I think we're gonna see him get countered. You know, slip and slide that right hand off of his shoulders, and then just bam. Do you know what I mean? I think he's right for the uppercut as well, Hooney, and I think it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath. That's just me.
I think it could be. I think you might see Wardley getting outboxed early on at times. But I think Wardley will manage to drag Hooney into his type of fight. I don't think Hooney's established enough to maybe outbox him for the whole fight. I think Wardley, and once he lets the hands go and puts pressure on, you're only going to be able to, you'll avoid some of the punches, but you're not going to avoid them all, are you? So Wardley seems to be he's a banger at a certain level. What he'll be like higher up, we'll have to wait and see. But I feel Wardley will get the better of him and maybe stop him late on. That's just my feeling on it.
Well, I hadn't seen too much of Hooney, and I spent an hour or so watching him this week. I think he's very capable. He's got good balance. He's got good punch selection. He's a really nice body puncher. He doesn't throw those long body shots, so he doesn't waste things. But I don't like the positioning of his right hand. You know, he tends to hold it a little bit further in front as opposed to around the side. So he's a little bit open around the blind side. But the one thing I did notice was Wardley likes to push you back against the ropes. He likes to dominate that ring center and push you back. And I watched Hooney it was an Australian title fight against somebody who wasn't that great. And he managed to push Hooney back several times onto the ropes. And we know what happened when Fraser Clark got backed up onto the ropes against Wardley. Is a vicious puncher. In terms of a distinction with Wardley, I think he's what I would call an aggressive puncher. And some punchers are clinical punchers, like a Lennox Lewis who was mentioned earlier. But Wardley's an aggressive puncher. I think he's one of those fighters who's street tough. I think it'll be explosive early on. Hooney will have no problems whatsoever landing shots on Wardley. But I think just the aggressiveness and the power of Wardley will be the difference. And I think it'd be an exciting fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went early. But I'm expecting Wardley to get the job done anywhere from the 4th to the 6th round. And I think Hooney's a little bit delicate around the whiskers. He got hurt badly by Lerona. And there's also a clip of him online in sparring with the big 16-ounce gloves getting knocked out on his feet. I don't like to see that.
I think if things do get tough, Wardley has an inner steel about him that we've seen. He can hang tough if he needs to. So we know that about Wardley. Maybe we don't know that about Hooney. What you're saying, right, Jules? There could be doubts over that.
That's the point that I made on one of the videos I did about the fight, that Wardley's almost got this sort of superpower that when he gets pressured and when he's really hurt, he seems to have this extra gear that sort of puts him in some sort of like beast mode, and he's that's when he's at his most dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, there are natural fighters and there are natural boxers, and sometimes they're not one and the same. And he always strikes me, does Wardley, as the kind of, he's got deficiencies. Technically, he's got deficiencies, but he just strikes me as one of those guys who there's no quitting him whatsoever. And when he bites down and he lets those shots go, look what he did to David Adelaide, look what he did to Fraser Clark, which was frightening, absolutely frightening. And I just think he's got that street toughness. Whereas he'll probably have some difficult moments, but I don't think Hooney can match him for the firepower and the street toughness. I think it'd be a big knockout.
And if I'm not mistaken, Hooney doesn't have much of a stoppage record, does he?
No, and if you're coming up against such a puncher like that, you need to have something to keep them off, or you need to be defensively sound. It's either one or the other, or both if possible. But if you're not defensively sound and you haven't got the firepower to keep them off, and you have shown vulnerabilities on getting hit by punchers,
then you're finished.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation for you. Yeah, the only thing I've got a worry about with Wardley is inactivity. I think he's had one round in 15 months since the first Fraser Clark fight. And Hooney has had, I think, 3 or 4 10-rounders under his belt. So whilst he's not blasting everybody out, he's getting the rounds under his belt. And that's the only reservation I've got with Wardley, is that's not an active heavyweight for me.
Should we also worry about Wardley being prone to being cut just on the bridge of the nose? Now, it doesn't interfere with vision, I understand that. But is there a worry about that? Is there something you've seen that's a weakness there?
It does tend to open constantly when you've got a nose like that. We had a fighter over here, Bob. I don't know if you're familiar with him, Brian Rose, and he's had his nose done now, but like it had the same sort of dent in the bridge of the nose, and every time he got hit on it, it'd pop. You know what I mean? So it's probably going to happen again. I don't know as many cutsmen as probably Julian would do. So Julian's probably best placed to answer that question. But I do think it's probably a concern, particularly, you break the nose, blood's running down the throat and all sorts,
I mean, it's a handicap, isn't it? It's that hurts there. The cuts, when you get cut above the eyes, it tends not to hurt as much. The adrenaline kicks in, but you get damage on the nose. I always think of Don Curry against Colin Jones. The horrific. I mean, obviously there's a Charles Marciano, but that hurts. At least the blood's not running into your eyes, but it's a lot of damage and it's a lot of pain. And Hooney is a little bit shorter, and he does come in quite low. He's quite compact and comes in low, so we might get head clashes. We really might get clashes. So it's an interesting.
Yeah. He's a bit of well, from what I've seen, he is a bit of a swarmer, and I think he's only chance personally, just from my experience of what I've seen and stuff like that. He's just got to keep it close. Don't give Wardley the sort of space to detonate any shots. Use that in-ring experience that he's going to have over Wardley, just to make it a really, really rough sort of fight. Not pretty. Just swarm in and, maybe chop the tree down, go to the body, because as Jules was saying, he's quite a compact and decent body puncher. If you can't do it by shocking him with blasting him out, take your time. It's a 12-round fight, and hopefully you can chop the tree down.
What are the odds? What are the odds going like in the UK? Here I'm getting 1.29. I think, for Fabio and 3.85 for Hooney.
So he's a sizable underdog then, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he is, yeah.
He's a warm favourite, is Wardley, yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on the media hype train, doesn't it? Sorry, gents.
Yeah, I don't ever check the odds out. It's just not something I do. It's I don't know why. Sometimes it can influence you as well, can't they? You think what the bookies know, what we don't know, you know.
Wardley's definitely the favourite, 3-10, and Hooney's 5-2.
So
yeah, okay, yeah.
3-10, so it's 3-1 on, just over then. So is it?
Yeah. I just hit the calculate button and it gave me 29 over 100 and 57 over 20. It wants to be really precise.
I think the bookies seem to think Wardley will win in the 8th round. Looks like the lowest odds for Wardley to win in a round, going to round betting. So a draw is 16-1.
So Andy, Bob, what did you both get then? I've not seen the previews yet on your channels. What did you end up with?
So what I ended up with was that if it goes to the distance and it's a boxing match, Justice Hooney on points, but that I personally felt that Fabio Wardley would get to Hooney in the latter parts of the fight, maybe around 6 or 7, and that might be the end of it. That it would be an interesting fight. I was looking forward to it. I didn't think Hooney would come to lie down, but I expected Wardley, with much assistance from the crowd, if it got really tough for him, to prevail, like to have that energy and to eventually connect.
Yeah, I thought Wardley would get to him late. I also said if it did go the distance, £1 on a draw might be worth it at 16-1. But I think Wardley will get to him. I also think Frank Warren's no mug, is he? And he's way ahead of Eddie Hearn when it comes to matching fighters. So he's probably seen something himself that he's quite confident to put him in with Justin Hooney. Otherwise, would he have gone for that fight? I don't think so. I think Eddie Hearn is selling Hooney to be more dangerous than he is. I'm not saying he's a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he could outbox Wardley early at times, but I think Wardley will get to him, I think.
There's a few subscribers on the channel here who are either from Australia or they're from New Zealand, and they all seem to rate Hooney. They think that Hooney is actually really, very good. I mean, he's beaten Kevin Lerena, but I think Lerena's by far the best name on his record.
He's got a good amateur background, doesn't he? But that's not hindered Wardley. I mean, a lot of people made a big thing about this. I'm coming from a white collar background, but he's passed every test that he's had put to him so far, hasn't he? So, and any time I've doubted him, he's always proved me wrong. So I've kind of stopped doubting him.
I'm going to make a big prediction here, lads. Sorry.
No, I was just about to say, I think we can all name some historical all-time greats who didn't actually have almost any amateur background. So I don't think we should get too worried about the lack of an amateur background sometimes. Sorry, Jamie, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. I was just, doing a bit of Mystic Meg predicting. If Wardley doesn't look very good, I've noticed TalkSport, which seemed to be the big sort of propaganda arm for boxing at the moment, and particularly DAZN. They've been making noise about a Wardley fight with Moses Itauma. So if Fabio Wardley doesn't look very good, expect that to be the big noise, because they're rubbishing Martin Bacoli at the moment. So I don't think that fight will happen. Always go where the noise is being made. So I think you'll have Ben Davison in the corner of my boy Moses and the Barry fella in the opposite corner.
Oh,
they know what side
you think that's how it'll pan out, eh?
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Joel?
I don't want to see that. I wouldn't want to see, for reasons I expressed last week. I know that the commercial train is going to match, Moses within the next 12 months in a real meaningful fight. Yeah, my views the last time we did this was develop him at his own pace. Right now, even though Moses is looking so good, a fighter like Wardley could have a bad fight and then have a great fight. You can't go on the form, and I think that would be too risky right now.
Yeah.
For Moses, he doesn't need fights like that. He needs to take his time.
Not chasing the record now, are they? So they can take their time. They can really do a Ricky Hatton job with him, to be honest.
Yeah, and you have to look as well, don't you, at the fighters coming through. We can't look at the heavyweight picture as it is right now. You know, Usyk's not going to be there in 12, 18 months. Who's going to be there? Who's going to be the incumbent in 12, 18 months? And is that going to be, you know, that's going to suit Moses, isn't it? If you bring him along slowly. I mean, he's probably 3, 4 years away from me from being, you know, at the top of the tree. Don't rush him. But again, is it Cabell who's going to be at the top? I don't know. You know, there's it's going to be wide open right now, isn't it? We have to start thinking about life after Tyson Fury, retired or not, Anthony Joshua, and Usyk. We have to start thinking about, you know, life after those guys.
So it's almost certain that at some point Moses is going to run into either of, maybe both, Daniel Dubois and Joe Parker, all of whom are under Frank Warren.
I think possibly, Bob. Sorry to just jump in again, but possibly not. I don't follow the landscape and the politics of it as much as you guys do. But I've not heard too much from you know, the Saudi boss in terms of putting these big fights on. And if you remember, people in the same camps, the only time we've got these fights is in the last 2 or 3 years. You know, in Ridar season, we haven't had them previous to that.
Right.
And if Turkish does go and do his own thing, we might get that situation which we've had, you know, the last sort of 10, 15 years where we don't get the natural fights that we're calling out.
Yeah.
And you get the belt splitting up, and then you get champions all avoiding each other. And Matchroom have a champion, Queensbury have a champion. We might go back to that because I'm not seeing too much of these massive cards put together, unless I've missed it because I'm just not looking for it.
No, and particularly, I think Usyk being world champion at the moment, you know, that would favour the Saudi side of things, because I personally think that Eddie and Frank have fallen out of favour with the Saudis. There's been he's been a lot more tepid, hasn't it? That relationship, anyway, seemingly on the surface. So, you know, whilst Usyk's champion, they're going to remain in there. But I don't think Daniel Dubois, I don't think he's going to be. He's going to have all the noise made about him. I don't know what you lads think. If he can manage to do the impossible in July, which I don't think he will.
It's all gone a bit quiet lately, and Frank Warren did say that Moses Itauma was meant to be on a big show, but the big show kind of fell through. But he never really went into more detail about this big show. So,
yeah,
Ken, what's happening there? So that tells you something, maybe, that reading between the lines, that Turkey Al Sheikhs, they lost a wee bit of interest with the British guys. And,
so you see how spoilt we've been, Andy. We've now, in the last 2 years, we've come to expect the big fights.
Yeah.
And we didn't have them for such a long time. So we might, I hope not. But if he's certainly turning his interest to other things or looking at setting up his own boxing league, and I'm not really up to date on that status, we might get what we used to have, which was a real saturated product and not fights that we wanted to see. I hope that doesn't happen, because at least the big cards have brought my interest back to boxing. But if
he's turning his attention to football now. He's looking at buying Millwall, and I've actually said that with the advent of them sort of buying a stake in DAZN, I think in the next few years, DAZN will go for the rights to the Premier League. I think that's what they're going to be looking for, because, you know, oil, and you've got electric cars coming and everything like that. The world's biggest commodity really is sport.
Yeah,
you control sport, you control the Premier League, you've got it, and I think that's what's coming personally. And I wasn't wrong about this league. I didn't say Dana White was going to be involved, but I made the prediction on Porky's Corner about 6-7 months ago, and Russ was sort of not laughing at me, but I don't think he believed me, and I've seen it coming, you know. So I think I'm right about that. Time will tell.
Who was the boxer that was slagging Turkey off this week, calling him a dictator?
Teofimo Lopez. So, go ahead. I was going to add some more to it.
Okay. Carry on, Bob. I was just going to say that there might be a wee bit of truth in that. It's more of what Turkey wants, Turkey gets, and he's the guy calling the shots, isn't he? So, what do you think?
Well, I mean, with respect to Teofimo Lopez, we have to decide: is he an elite athlete who's taken a morally supportable and admirable position and said something about the authoritarian nature of Turkey, or was he a young guy who flipped out and lost his temper and said something about Turkey? Right. So we don't know which kind of guy he is. I'm thinking the latter. But what was interesting is that he was pretty much canned as well for it, right? And the fight with Devin Haney is now not likely to happen. So he was not dealt with by kid gloves.
Yeah, he's going to put in his place.
Shame for him, because I think he'd deal with Haney quite handily. To be honest, Haney's just looked very, very poor. I think Ryan Garcia took his soul.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looked poor as well after that, hasn't he? Ryan Garcia, that last fight was a waste of time, wasn't it? That was a waste of. I stayed up to 3 in the morning to watch that. Just deprived me of sleep for that.
Thankfully, it was during the daytime with me, but it was, there were many other things that I wish I'd been doing.
Yeah, you could have been chopping logs, Bob.
Anything, right? Yeah.
Could have been sticking pins in your eyes. That might be more enjoyable than.
It's just, if we can just finish off one thing. If, and I think it's unlikely, but if Hooney can take Wardley the distance, and we all think that he's done enough to edge it, what do you think the chances are of him getting an even shake in front of the judges at Portman Road in front of hometown hero?
I think it's all going to be geared in Wardley's favour, isn't it? It's a bit, maybe in some respects, you'll maybe disagree with me on this, but Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall, the first fight, Catterall won it in my eyes, and that was in Scotland. That was a hometown decision for Josh Taylor. The second fight, I actually thought Josh Taylor just won it. I thought he beat him by maybe a round. But when I was watching it, the commentary was all pro Catterall. Every clip of the highlights in between rounds, it was all Catterall's highlights. It was none of Josh Taylor's highlights. I thought, this is just all geared up for Catterall, which got a decision at the end of the day, but two rights don't make a wrong. But that's just my opinion on that. Nobody else.
Everyone watching it is going to believe that Fabio won, even if he's knocked out, because the commentary is going to be so biased. It's not going to be remotely believable.
My sort of view is, I'm not sure about. I mean, bad decisions still happen, and I don't scrutinize boxing. Again, the caveat is I don't watch it as much as you guys. But since Turkish kind of got more involved with boxing, we're seeing fairer decisions. Who would have thought that both Fury and Usyk fights would have gone for Usyk, even though we had him winning? And I thought the Ben Eubank, that was such a fair decision, and the margin was so fair. So I am wondering if some of the corruption with the scoring, there's been conversations under the radar with Turkish saying, look, this is ruining people's view of boxing and boxing being corrupt. We're going to clean it up. We start with the officials and we start with the judging. So I think we're seeing less and less bad scorecards. And I thought, like the Josh Taylor fight recently, a couple of weeks ago, again, we watched it and we were scoring it round by round. I had him 4 rounds down. And then when I saw that, the scorecards largely went towards that. Certainly one of them did. I thought we've seen some fair decisions, because what usually happens is that it's in the commercial interest of boxing for Fury to get that decision. It's in the commercial interest of boxing for Conor Benn to get that decision and for Josh Taylor to get that decision, because she can make bigger fights.
For sure, yeah.
The decisions have been very, very fair recently. Not all decisions, not all refereeing, but
that's a good point.
We've seen.
It's a good point to make, because we all focus on the negative. Like, I spent more airtime talking about Hamza Shiraz being very, very, very lucky to get the draw against Adames. And Turkey's sort of apparent, physical involvement in moving, in looking at scorecards. So it is good to get that counterbalance, that we are probably entering an era of more generally fair scoring.
And
They're
we might
still-
have had a situation whereas Hamza Shearer's got that decision 3 years ago, had that been pre the involvement, even though it was a bad draw, we could have got a bad, it could have gone the other way and it could have gone to Shearer's.
Good points. Middleweight champion.
Yeah.
They're
I
still
was
trying to
hugely-
skew. Sorry, Andy.
I was just saying I was hugely concerned before both Usyk Fury fights, especially the second one, that Usyk was going to get jobbed on the cards, because the second Joshua fight Usyk had, I think it was the one that was a split decision. There's no way that was a split decision.
Yeah.
And it was a Fury one a split decision as well, but I'm just glad Usyk got the win. No, was it the first one was a split?
First one was a split.
First one was a split. I must say I'm absolutely terrified about Dubois managing to prevail by either foul means or dodgy judging. But one of my sort of constant worries.
As you alluded to, was that yesterday or the day before, Jules, about the AI judge being really accurate, but what we agreed to be accurate in the Fury, because it was even wider to Usyk.
Yeah, it was 118. Was it 118, 110?
The AI judging, listen, I'm not saying I'm an advocate of it, because people will have, if you look online, people have a view of AI judging, and it's like, hang on a minute, you don't know the criteria of the program that's been written. But what we can say is, if you look at how aligned the punch stats are, what we get afterwards, and then we look at the AI judging. The AI judging has been spot on. I mean, it's a sad situation where we have to bring AI judging potentially as being the sole, kind of arbitrator of boxing scoring, just because the humans are so bad. And you have to think, obviously, the judges are sometimes sat at different positions of the ring, so there's not a lot of factors. But the AI judging, what we've seen so far, has been absolutely spot on. It's
really, really good. I think we should. I think we should take this up on part 2, because I noticed my little warning has already gone off, and I would hate us to lose something, mid-sentence or mid-conversation. So can we take this AI judging issue up for part 2?
Definitely, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll go to part 2 on this on Andy's Cavern Boxing.